honestly, and I'm going to carry this into the next type of content that we're talking about, but I would rather, I would rather have 100 people show up and have all of their names and email addresses than have 1,000 people show up and not know who any of those people are. That's me. I would rather have 100 and know who they are and be able to follow up with them than have 1,000 and have them remain anonymous, because I don't think anonymity is the best way for us to do.
Well, and by not doing that, we're just hoping that they'll show up in the future, and they might.
Right.
If they run into a crisis or whatever, they might go, yeah, that church, remember we went to that thing. I really like those people. Let's go there.
Right.
You're hoping that's going to happen. We pray the Holy Spirit moves through people, of course. But he gave us tools to actually track people. Let's use them. So,
Hey, welcome to the Missional Marketing Podcast, Season 3, Episode 21. I'm Bart Blair, and I am here with my co-host, the CEO of Missional Marketing, Jason Hamrock. Jason, thanks for being with me on the show today.
Oh, Bart, I'm excited. Thanks for having me. And I love getting these conversations because we're going to talk about something pretty fun today. Something we sit and talk about every day, right? So
absolutely. Absolutely. I should say Happy New Year. This is our first podcast episode of the 2023 calendar year. In fact, we're recording this. What is today? January 2nd. It's like literally, we're recording this on January 2nd. It'll be out. This episode will be out by the end of this week. So if you're listening to this in real time, Jason suggested to me earlier before we started recording, and I think it was a really good idea to say, what we're going to talk about today ought to be maybe one of your primary goals with your church website in 2023. I got the year right. I was afraid I was going to say 2022. 2023, one objective. The title of this podcast episode is The Missing Ingredient to Your Church Website. Now, don't be offended if it isn't missing from your website, but maybe there are some things that you can do to improve. That missing ingredient, the thing that's really going to level up your church website and really help you use it effectively to be the tool that you want it to be as far as digital outreach and connection in your community is concerned, is what we're going to call a call to action. A call to action. And the goal with using a call to action on your church website, and you're going to see we're going to talk about multiple calls to action, is to move past using your church website as a brochure or as a business card, just a place for information, but to actually leverage your church website as a way to start new relationships with people online. Jason and I can attest to the fact that we look at Google Analytics for hundreds of churches every single month, and we see thousands and thousands and thousands of clicks to church websites. But all of those clicks are nothing more than clicks unless the person on the other end actually raises their hand and identifies themselves and says, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I need. This is how you as a church can help me. Otherwise, they're nothing more than anonymous clicks. And so what we want to do is unpack today how you can use this call to action, the CTA, to start new relationships with people online. So with that as our foundation, Jason, why don't you talk a little bit about what a call to action really is? What does that mean when we use that terminology?
Yeah. So you mentioned something previously. You said most websites act like a brochure or a business card. And I would say that that's okay. The problem is you don't want to build your website for your people only. And so part of what we're talking about here is understanding the posture that you're wanting to reach new people. If you reach your own people, that's awesome. But they're already coming to your church. There's different ways to engage those people. But if you have a website that reaches people in your community who either are unchurched, dechurched, don't know who Jesus is, but they have a need and they stumble upon your website, you want to be taking that call to action seriously. Okay, so a call to action is basically it's prompting or it's directing somebody to do something while they're on your website. So it's like if you have a web page and you don't want to just have a bunch of information and leave them hanging. You want to have information that leads them to take a step. So it's a call to action. So you might have we're going to get into this one, but you might have a marriage page, right? Most people have a marriage page, but it's only talking about their marriage ministry that might meet a few times a year. And, email this person or we'll let you know when the next marriage ministry event's going to happen. Okay, fine. But if somebody in your community is struggling with their marriage and they stumbled upon your church website and they landed on your marriage page, they're looking for help. So a call to action might be, while you're waiting for our next event, download this amazing PDF on 5 ways to increase or improve your marriage by this weekend, right? Some kind of a PDF that your pastor maybe spoke on a sermon series, or there's tons of resources out there. But when you do that, you ask them to give us your name, email, maybe even their cell phone. You could text them some information. You just generated a lead. That was the call to action. And so, if you start looking around the marketplace, insurance companies, obviously credit cards, anywhere you go, what do they want? They want your name, their email. If they get any more information like your cell phone, they're loving that, because that is like gold to them. We kind of need to think the same thing in the church world, because the days of people just showing up to church, those are starting to dwindle a little bit, right? We're more of a post, Christian nation anymore. But if we can have content on our website where actually we're engaging people and we generate that call to action that turns into a lead, that's what we're talking about here. So it can be a button, a form, a web link. It can be anything, but it's that call to action to get them to engage more.
Right. We talked about people who might be at what we'd refer to as the top of the funnel, right? And we're going to do actually a podcast episode in the upcoming weeks on the concept of a funnel for people who are new to your church. The top of the funnel is really wide, right? And so there are a lot of people up there. Most often, people who come to your website who are at the top of the funnel, they kind of spin around the top of the funnel and then they bolt. And what we want to do is we want to guide them through a process using the website to move one step closer to the other end of the funnel, and having calls to action that guide people through that process that allow you to initiate relationship and nurture relationship with them. Those are the people who are ultimately going to end up planning a visit. Well, let's talk about that. I use that phrase, plan a visit. Those are 3 words that Jason and I have probably used a bazillion times as we've talked to churches and even on this podcast. Jason, give us a few examples, including the plan a visit. Explain what that is. Explain what you see churches using that plan a visit for. Maybe a few other of the most common calls to action that we would see on a church website. And then we're going to talk about some that maybe churches aren't using as effectively that we think they could. But let's start with the ones that are the most common.
Yeah, if you visit 10 different church websites, you're going to get a lot of, and they have a plan a visit button or a page on their website. You're going to get 10 different ideas of what that looks like. And some churches just have a couple of pieces of information, all the way to it's rolled out. There's a ton of information along with a form with it, that you could plan your visit. You click on that form and there's 25 steps or 25 fields for you to fill out. I mean, who does that? Like nobody. You might get 1 or 2 out of 100. And then I've seen everything.
No. You might get 1 or 2 out of 1,000 or 10,000. When you're asking for names and addresses and birth dates and blood types and when you had your last bowel movement, whatever questions you're asking, right? It just sometimes those forms get a little bit too personal. But
it's like, well, I made the analogy when we were talking earlier. It's like you're asking them to fill out as if they're going to the ER. Now, if I'm going to the ER, I'm going to give you all that information, because you need to know everything about me, right? But I'm not going to the ER. I'm thinking about planning a visit to come to your church. So maybe I would love to see churches do more like, hey, text the word new and we'll send you some text messages about your upcoming visit. And then from there, you can have some links like, oh, you want to go ahead and pre-register your kids? Click here, because maybe you got 6 kids you want to pre-register. And you don't want to do that on Sunday morning at 9:00 and to walk into church at 9:40 when the service is 40 minutes in. So some parents might want to do that, but you give them options. Those are called call to actions. Mm-hmm. So I'd love to see a plan a visit page where there's just solid information about what to expect. And you can have, but inside of that, you want to have links or you want to have call to actions to go deeper. That is where you gain some ground, because if you can get somebody that clicks on a plan to visit and they actually text you or they fill out some kind of a form, well, guess what? They are really serious about coming to visit you. That's a pretty hot lead. And so you don't want to squish them with, make sure you fill all these information, right? You want to be very careful about that messaging, because you just want them to know we care about you. You're invited here, no pressure. But we'd love to see you this Sunday in our church.
Yeah, I know a lot of churches, most churches, and we encourage churches to have a plan of visit page on your website. I think it's very, very important. But as a call to action, I would call it kind of a passive call to action, because it's really not the best call to action to get somebody to self-identify and to exchange information with you. So I would say that it is often included, but it is seldom used. And, maybe your church is an outlier. And if your church is an outlier, would you please post it in the comments or send me an email and let me know, because I'd love to see what your church is doing if you're actually getting a high volume of people who are actually filling out a plan of visit form, because you're onto something that maybe other churches can benefit from. So just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, I think when I was sharing with Bart, I live in Arizona, so I hate to say it, we went and saw the Arizona Cardinals play football on Christmas Day. Okay, so it wasn't really about watching the Arizona Cardinals. They're not very good this year. But
there were plenty of empty seats, is what he's telling us.
No, they played the Buccaneers. So, of course, you want to go watch Tom Brady play. Okay. But my point in saying that is, when I bought those tickets using SeatGeek, it was a very pleasurable experience. They walked you through. They didn't overwhelm you. It was very easy. Then I got messages about the upcoming, the game day. And of course, it's a bigger deal because you're going to a big football game. And so parking and all that kind of stuff played into it. But I really liked how they were not pushy, but just wanting to inform. If you want to learn more, click here, kind of a thing. And I think we can take some cues. So if you're the communication director, you're the webmaster, whatever, you're in charge of your website and you are overseeing that plan of visit page, I really recommend you take a look at a bunch of other church websites to see what they do, but then just pay attention when you're buying something or you're going to an event or you're going to a concert or whatever that might be. Put yourself in the seat of that person that's planning a visit to your church. Do you like all that experience or not? And I would love, Bart and I would love to have a conversation with you. And we would do this, for free, for fun. Let's talk about what your experience looks like. Because we look at a lot of them. We have a lot to say about it. And there's certain level of information I want to see. I'd love to hear see a video from your lead pastor, perhaps. Love to see some clips about a recent message. I could get a flavor for who he is. I could learn more about children's ministry. Maybe there's even a video from your children's pastor, your student pastor. You can be very intentional about having call to actions and to watch and engage on your plan of visit, more than just a couple of paragraphs with one photo. Think through that, right?
I think we have an entire podcast episode dedicated to the plan of visit page. So I will try to find that and I will link that in our show notes, because I think that would be helpful for folks, where we kind of extrapolate some of the best aspects of that plan of visit page. I'll just mention a couple of other things quickly that I think are often seen on church websites, but not necessarily as effective at starting new relationships. One of them is the sign up for our church newsletter. The reality is, I think people who have already connected in your church and who are interested in what you have going on in your church are likely to do that. But top of the funnel, people who are just checking you out, they're not likely to do that. I do it all the time. I get a lot of different church newsletters because I go on church websites and I sign up just because I want to see what their church newsletters look like. Yeah. I'm just nosy about what kind of content they're creating. But the reality is, most church newsletters aren't adding value to a person who doesn't attend your church. So the person who's not attending your church, they're not really going to benefit much from signing up. And they probably know that. They're going to be hesitant to do that. So again, sign up for a newsletter. It's often included. It's seldom used. It should be on your church website, but don't see that as a lead generator on your website. Another one is that watch live, or the watch the live stream, or watch online. I think it's really important that you have that on there. And I would use that language, watch live or watch the live stream. That is a call to action. You're using action language and telling person what to do. But again, they can still do that anonymously. They don't have to let you know that they're there. They don't have to self-identify. It is a great way for them to get a glimpse into your church, what you're all about, what your sermons are like, maybe what your worship experience is like. But it's not a lead generation quality click. It's just it is a step for them to get to know you a little bit better, but it doesn't give you an opportunity to get to know them any better.
Yeah. No, I real quick to piggyback on that, you usually see the word message at the top, right? As a menu. Change that to word watch, right? Message isn't a call to action. Watch is. So
yeah. Or you see message or sermons or sermon archive or something like that. I change it to watch. I manage a church's website, one of our church partners, and we recently changed it to watch and read, because they do their sermon every week and they do a blog post from their sermon every week. So those are the two calls to action: watch and read. It's telling the person what you want them to do. So those are some common things that you see. And you probably have, as a church leader, you probably already have some of those calls to action on your church website. But what we want to do is kind of dig a little bit deeper in the box here and talk about some other CTAs, some other calls to action that will get people to take that next step with you and to self-identify so that you can start a relationship with them. So Jason, why don't you talk a little bit about the concept of of RSVPs, how and when a church might actually use an RSVP?
Well, around your events, right? Two off the top of my head would be Christmas and Easter. Why not? Even though you're not selling tickets, like my church asks you to go ahead and RSVP. You're not getting a ticket. There's no transaction there. It's just more like, hey, I'm Jason and I'm having this many in my party, right? And I'm giving them my information. It's just it's simple information, but it's kind of nice because I got text messages about the upcoming Christmas Eve service. So it's kind of nice because you could generate names and emails or text or phone numbers from that. But like Christmas and Easter are two of them that are really, really obvious. But you have some other ones, like maybe there's a special event you're going to have, even though it's free, some kind of a conference that it might be free, or it could be VBS, just different ways of different things that you have going on that if you think about it, you could do some kind of Eventbrite or something that requires somebody to give you a little piece of information in exchange for their virtual or digital ticket that doesn't really exist. It's just, hey, you're now registered. We can't wait to see you on Saturday or Sunday. Yeah. So those are the easy ones, right?
Yeah, here's a little idea that I like to use. I get pushback from churches sometimes when I say, hey, you should do a registration for your fall festival or for your Easter egg hunt or for your Christmas or your Easter service. And they're like, well, we just want everybody to come. You don't really have to have a ticket. That's great. I love that you do that. But even if it's not necessary, I recommend using Eventbrite or using AllEvents. Number one, it gets you another place where people can search and find you online and find your events that aren't connected to your church. Secondly, those people, if they're planning to come and they're not connected to your church, they're going to go ahead and they're going to RSVP on Eventbrite and AllEvents. And that's a safe place for them because they don't feel like they're giving the information to the church. They're giving the information to Eventbrite or to AllEvents. They don't necessarily equate the fact that you as the church are now going to have their personal information. Then what I like to do is say, okay, if you registered or got your ticket on Eventbrite, you print your ticket and you come and you present that to us at the door, and we're going to enter you into a drawing for a $100 Amazon gift card or for some special Easter prize or something of that nature. Because then you actually get names and email addresses of people from your community who RSVP, and you can then verify who of those people actually showed up. And that changes the way that you do your follow-up with them. Because if you know they RSVP'd through Eventbrite, you don't 100% know they came unless they actually present the ticket to you when they actually get there. But you got their name and their email address, so you can email them and invite them to other things and nurture that relationship with them. But if they actually show up and they give you the ticket because they want to be entered into the drawing for the prize or whatever it is, now you have a different way of following up with them. Because almost guaranteed, if they show up on your Easter Sunday service, it's their first time, they're probably not going to fill out your connection card on their first Sunday. But if they brought that ticket because their kids are going to be registered to win the 500-pound chocolate Easter bunny or whatever it is that you're going to give away, or the big screen TV or the man cave supplies or whatever it is that your church is going to give away, you can now connect those people to the actual RSVP. And now you can start nurturing a relationship with them. So I think anytime, anywhere you can use one of those platforms to do free tickets. The benefit is, one, you get more local SEO juice. People can find you in Google and find your events in Google because they're going to be Googling things like Easter activities for families or Easter stuff near me or whatever. And secondly, you get some names and email addresses that you can build relationship with and nurture those people down the funnel.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't do it because, like you said, we just want people to show up. We don't want to, well, maybe that's you just not wanting to do the extra work. But I'll tell you, okay, so don't do that if the following weekends, when you have a big event, your attendance like doubles. Okay, then you're onto something. Don't change. But if that's not the case, you see a little bit of a bump increase, but not much. That tells me that event you had was successful. It was great. But if you stopped there, you just wasted all that effort that went into that event. Now, those people might show up in the future, true, but why not collect some information? Go back to your leaderships. The reason why you do these events, why is because you have nothing else to do? No, it's so that you can invite people to church so they can hear the gospel and you can help change their lives and their eternal future. So taking these extra steps of you're putting on a big event anyway, to have some kind of easy registration, even if you make it you push it out there, but you don't require like your own congregation doesn't necessarily register, fine. But if you could put it out there, I might as well collect the registrations from brand new people to follow up with them and invite them to church. And now you can track that progress. And so I kind of think it's either we don't have time for it, or it's a burden to people. People are used to doing that anyway. Yeah. Especially like you said, Eventbrite. That's what they're used to doing.
Yeah.
So
they have to do it for everything else in the world. And so I would rather, honestly, and I'm going to carry this into the next type of content that we're talking about, but I would rather have 100 people show up and have all of their names and email addresses than have 1,000 people show up and not know who any of those people are. Yeah. That's me. I would rather have 100 and know who they are and be able to follow up with them than have 1,000 and have them remain anonymous, because I don't think anonymity is the best way for us to do. Well,
and by not doing that, we're just hoping that they'll show up in the future, and they might. Right. If they run into a crisis or whatever, they might go, yeah, that church, we went to that thing. We really like those people. Let's go there.
Right.
You're hoping that's going to happen. We pray the Holy Spirit moves through people, of course, but he gave us tools to actually track people. Let's use them. So, yeah.
One more tool. Here's another tool. And this, you know what? We have harped on this, camped on this, sung this song for a while, and we're going to kind of land the plane as it relates to calls to action. And that is on the topic of gated content and lead generators. Gated content and lead generators. Now, you talked a little bit about this at the very outset of this conversation. You use the example of some sort of PDF on the marriage page that helps someone with their marriage. When we're talking about gated content or lead generators, that could be helpful PDFs. It could be eBooks. It could be signing up for an email list that provides a benefit to the person, or a text messaging benefit. It's not your newsletter. Some examples might be, you use the marriage one already. You go to the children's ministry page. On your children's ministry page, how about if your children's ministry team could create like a 10 email sequence of devotionals that you can do at dinner with your family over the course of the next 10 weeks. And once a week, they get an email that gives them a devotional to do with their dinner, their family at dinner time. And they're signing up for this specific email list to receive this specific thing. Or you could put it all in a PDF package, or a parenting guide, an ebook, something that's a resource that they could download and use on their own. I like the idea of email sequences or text sequences because it keeps them connected to you for a longer period of time. Those are some examples. I shared this with Jason before we got on the before we started recording. We have a church partner in New York, and the pastor of that church is co-vocational. He works outside of being both the pastor of the church. He has a job outside of the church, and he actually has his own business. And he recently tweeted that he had added a call to action to his business website on every single page. And the number of leads that he got in like the next few weeks, like tripled or quadrupled, something like that, because now every page that somebody visits has a specific and a unique call to action, something that they can do where they're, self-identifying. So Jason, let's talk through some of the pages that a church might have on their church website, common pages that could have calls to action, and what some of those calls to action could be.
Well, we really complicate this. So you mentioned children's ministry. I'm just say that, start right there. Okay. On your children's page, it's always just a brochure about our children's ministry, which anybody can kind of guess, and it's super boring. What if you actually had, I don't know, different topics to help parents be better parents, to help parents raise their kids better, to help parents drive their kids towards Jesus? So, for example, how to share Jesus with your children. Here's a PDF on the call to actions to say the sinner's prayer, and celebrate that. Maybe talk to them about, like, give them different passages. There's one. Another one might be how to help your kids navigate social media. Here's another one. How to discipline your children. I could go on and on and on and on. Just go ask parents in your congregation, what are you struggling with now as parents these days? Because my kids are kind of grown up. I don't know what parents of toddlers are dealing with, or elementary or junior. I don't know. But I know about high school and college, because that's where I am right now. I could give you all kinds of information about what you should do. Parents out there are struggling. And by the way, if you actually put that on your children's page, so you have a bunch of different ways for people to download stuff in exchange for their name and email, you could send them more information. That's also shareable. Your congregation, you now can use your people that go to your church to share that with their friends and family that might be dealing with those same issues that don't go to your church. I mean, this stuff goes on and on and on. I could get into marriage. I could get into your grief share, your grief support, if you guys celebrate recovery, like you guys have a page about addictions or whatever it might be. Just people, this is my biggest one. I'll go to a church website and I'll say, where's your page on how to accept Jesus as my Lord and Savior? They're going, I don't have a page on Jesus. Wait. You don't ever talk about, like, the gospel? You don't share that? No, we do it all the time at church. Oh, so I have to either come to your church or watch the full message to learn what it means to follow Jesus. You don't have a page on your website that explains that. And I get we need to work on that. Maybe that's another 2023 initiative. Like, you should put that at the top of your list.
Yeah.
Come on. So there's a ton of them. There's a few of them that you wrote down. I love these. Staff page. Page.
Yeah. So I was on a call with a pastor from Austin, Texas, just last week, and we were looking at the analytics on his church website. And aside from the homepage, the number one page that people were visiting on their church website was their staff page. It was actually the second most viewed page as an entry point, the landing page that people were coming to. Because when you Google the name of the church, it was one of the sublinks that you would see under the link Google extensions that you would see in Google, and people were clicking the staff page. I said, hey, how about doing something like a top 10 date night ideas from the church staff? Something creative, something fun that shows the personality of the people on the staff, and make it a downloadable PDF, something like that, something fun and creative. And I could see, as I was talking to Andy, like the wheels were turning. He's like, yeah, I could do something like that. He said, I need more information on that page. And I'm like, not only do you need more information on that page, but you actually need some kind of call to action. Some of the other things, we've talked about this in previous podcasts. We did one with Kenny Jang, where we talked about blogging and adding content, SEO content. And I shared a tool. I'll try to put this in the show notes as well. A tool where you can actually create a printable PDF version of the blog posts with the click of a button, and a person can actually give you their name and email address and download a printable version of your blog posts or any type of content that you have on the website. If you've got sermon pages, you can include, downloadable notes and outlines and transcripts and other things, and you can put those behind a PDF or behind an email wall so that people have to give you their email address for it. There's all kinds of things that you can do to generate leads, connections with people. And I'm going to share with you, before we wrap up this episode today, some things that we at Missional Marketing can do for you. But I want to kind of pivot to this last point, which is, if you're getting names and email addresses, you have to follow up with people. You have to have a plan.
There's that.
You have to have a plan. And I would say that 9 out of 10 times that I talk to churches about this, the follow-up process tends to be the place where they get hung up the most. Is this who's supposed to do this? Who does the follow-up? Where does that come from? How do we build those things? And those are things that we want to be able to help churches with. We've got creative ideas and we can coach you through that. We can even, you can hire us to do some of these things for you to help you up with them. But I wanted to share one of the things you mentioned just a second ago, Jason, and I hadn't even thought of putting this on our podcast, was shareable content. And anytime you're, one of these calls to action is share this. And we actually have a tool called the Share tool, where we can actually connect your church website to our share tool, and people can actually click a link, put a text, a cell phone number or an email address, and they can share a sermon or a page from your website or a blog post from your website or any of the content that you have on your website. But sharing is another advantage to that.
And that's, we're tracking who sent it and to whom they sent it to. Mm-hmm. So you have 2 bits of information. You're learning what your congregation, who's sent it and who's getting it. That share tool is pretty awesome. I love that. But back to your, the follow-up is really, really important to talk through. You don't just sign up for your weekly newsletter. Don't do that. So be intentional. If I we were talking about marriage. If I landed on that page, what kind of emails should I get from you? The first one shouldn't be subscribe to our newsletter, or shouldn't be come to church this Sunday. I wouldn't recommend it. I'd recommend here's some more information about marriage. Maybe you send a series of 3 or 4 or 5 emails where now you get to like the 3rd or the 4th one. Now it's like, hey, you want to know one of the best things you can do for your marriage? Show up to church. Be the hero of your family. You won't be disappointed. We got a phenomenal children's blah, 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 blah. So you want to be really intentional with that email sequence, and then track it. Now you've got a name and an email of somebody, put them in your church management system to see if they're a part of your church or not. And if they do show up, you can go back and track that history. And so many, just being very intentional about your follow-up emails or your follow-up text messages, it's going to make or break it, and you're not going to get it right, so you're going to fail. Failure is acceptable and embraced because that's how you get better. So it's going to take some time, but you want to go through that pain. Yeah.
All right. We're going to wrap this up because this has been a long episode, but hopefully this has been very, very helpful. The missing ingredient to your church website is the call to action. And we talked about some general calls to action, things like planning a visit, watching sermons, watching online, signing up for your electronic newsletter. We talked about calls to action that are more intentional, that are going to move people further down the funnel, which is things like RSVPing for events and activities so that you can follow up with them after the fact. And then creating gated content or lead generating content on your website that gives a person the reason to self-identify with what they're actually looking for help on, right? So whether that's your children's ministry page, your DivorceCare page, your grief share page, your sermon pages, what is it that they're interested in? And then you can develop a follow-up plan that's appropriate to what they're identifying as their primary concern, need, desire, or what have you. So, hey, Jason and I would love an opportunity to talk with you and your church about this if it's something that you want more information on. We actually manage the Google Ad Grant for hundreds of churches across the country. Maybe that's something your church has been considering doing. I would say that we do it differently than most other agencies that manage the Google Ad Grant, because our goal is not merely to spend Google's $10,000 a month, but it's actually to generate new leads for your church, actual names and email addresses and cell phones. We'd love to be able to talk to you about that. So reach out to us. You can schedule an appointment to meet with Jason or to meet with me. We would be happy to have that conversation with you. And, if this has been helpful, we're all the way at the very end of the podcast, and there's a very good chance that there's 1 or 2 of you that get all the way to this point. If you will, leave us a rating or a review and leave a comment on our YouTube channel. Let us know that this has been helpful for you. We're excited about some of the episodes that we have coming up here at the beginning of 2023. And Jason, as always, it's always a blast to hang around with you. We can go 1,000 miles an hour with the stuff because we're both so passionate about it and so excited about it. Parting words for our listeners for 2023?
Oh, yeah. If you're going to, have an initiative of your website, just don't overwhelm yourself. Try to knock out 1 or 2. Start with a plan a visit that makes sense. That's it.
All right. Very good. Thanks. We'll see you guys next time.